classes, social slime, they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air, fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one makes countries laugh to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slide, they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. See the shit, force a bear, fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one makes countries lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Okay, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Game On. It is November the 15th, 2015, and World War III progresses along as it's been planned. And so, you know, for those of you who missed World War I and World War II, well, welcome to World War III, which started the day World War II ended, just like World War II ended or started the day World War I ended. And it is all in a drive to get to the final empire. And these SOBs and their offspring and their agents are bound and determined that they are going to have everyone on the globe submit. And personally, I got news for them. There ain't no submission, folks. We watch them coerce their family members in the World War I and all the other wars, the Korean War, Vietnam, World War II. Watch the world get pummeled. Banker and lawyer lead us bombs. Hundreds of millions of innocent people slaughtered. For what? So they could have what they want. And that's the final empire. That everything on the planet is controlled by a small handful of psychopaths. And they are psychopaths, but the program's mainly being pushed by sociopaths. And I look at them as the useful idiots, those who have been indoctrinated into believing what the psychopaths want is a good thing. And your sociopaths are your teachers and your preachers and your police and your politicians and so on and so forth. They are the useful idiots. And they're not real bright people. They're people who have egos whose egos are easily flattered. And they're made to feel important, even though those who concocted this psychopathic plan know they're not important at all. They're just useful idiots. But these useful idiots are having a hard time realizing they're useful idiots. And we got to point that out to them. I mean, we really got to point that out to them. Because otherwise this is going to continue. Now, I put a post, if I can find it, and I guess I take this as a compliment I'm on Facebook too, which, by the way, is a total pain because I have basically destroyed one of my emails because it doesn't matter how many times I shut down, notifications and that, I just keep getting flooded. People keep adding me to Facebook sites that I want nothing to do with. I don't know how the hell you can go about doing that. But it's a necessary tool, I guess. So I'll go in there and flog away for a bit and try to get some kind of handle on where people's brains are at any given time. It's a good indicator of that. And so I started posting some stuff a bit ago about how all the so-called governments are actually corporations and yada, 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 to see what kind of flack I'd get back. And surprisingly, I haven't been getting much flack. So part of what I posted was that, World War II brought us two new entities called the UN and Israel. Now, I thought, the UN you can flog away at because either people hate it or think it's the greatest thing on the planet. Israel's a little bit of a different target. America is, we got to stand by Israel. And Canadian politicians got to stand by Israel, same as the Australians, seemingly the Brits and everybody else is standing behind Israel. Well, why is that? Well, not only are these politicians and groups standing behind Israel, they're also doing the bidding of the UN. Now, these are the two entities that were created, and that's why the Second World War was created in the first place. It didn't happen. It was created. We know it was created because way back when Wilson, as hard as he tried to get America to accept the League of Nations, and people still had a little bit too much history in their minds, whether convoluted or otherwise. They understood that there had been a war for their sovereignty. And the League of Nations required the giving up of sovereignty, and the people of America said, bite me, ain't going to happen. And as hard as Wilson tried to get Americans to sign on to the League of Nations, it didn't happen. So that was the end of World War I. World War II started the next day, where they took over completely the education system and used it as a propaganda indoctrination machine. And Wilson himself said that, because Truman said that, that Wilson warned that if the Americans didn't accept or sign on to the League of Nations, that within the next 20 years or so, there's going to be another major war, another world war. And guess what? Just on cue, we get another world war. The funny part about the Second World War is that Russia and the United States were allies. Everybody was stationed in Iran. And after the war, everybody, by agreement, before they went in with their supply chains and that, said that once the war ended, they would leave. Everybody left but Russia. As planned. So that we would have this problem. A major power, all of a sudden, who was an ally, all of a sudden doesn't appear to be an ally anymore because they don't want to leave Iran. Which brought in a whole bunch of meetings and that with the UN, and finally Truman, was it Truman? I think it was Truman, had to do something. We had to do something, and the UN was the body that allowed us to do it, and they forced Russia to leave Iran, and thus the two superpowers were born, and the Cold War was born, and World War III began. The thing about World War III is, for the most part, it's a psychological, spiritual war, and people got to get their heads wrapped around that one. So I posted some stuff. I didn't speak much about Paris, and I'm not going to spend too much time on Paris. It's just another mechanism. They're always looking for mechanisms. If you understand how these people operate, they're always looking for mechanisms. And if there isn't a crisis, well, then we'll just create one. And so this is one of those mechanisms. It's a created crisis. It's just like in 1984, the continual war against these basically unidentifiable people type of thing, to keep people in fear and locked down mentally. And so that's what it's about. But I put a post in last night. Actually, I was up quite late last night because I was trying to get a handle on where people were coming from. And I posted a simple, if I can find it here, a simple little post. But before I punch that in, I want to read this. And this is from Patricia J. Thompson, who I had posted what I'm going to post to the chat about what I posted out to Facebook last night. And what she put in here was, I mean, there's all kinds of these quotes around, but these are just in front of me, so I'll just read them. The easiest way to gain control of a population is carry out acts of terror. The public will clamor for such laws if their personal security is threatened. That comes from Joseph Stalin. Terrorism is the best political weapon, for nothing drives people harder than a fear of sudden death. And that quote comes from Adolf Hitler. And you can use Wilson's threat as well. The threat that he put forward, and it was a threat, that if you don't sign on to the League of Nations, look out. And then you have that beautiful quote from Warburg at the 1950 Senate hearings. We will have world government. That's the final empire. By consent or by conquest. So really what's going on with these terror attacks and these false flags and that is an effort to gain consent. That's what these attacks are about. To get the global population to consent. Well, trust me, you don't want to consent to these jackasses. You really, truly don't. Because if you do, well, the outcome ain't going to be very pretty, that's for sure. That's all I can tell you on that one. So, I was quite amazed last night. I posted this into quite a few, I mean, it was just like, you know, like right now, see, I just see this coming up right now. They have, remember they had that pride flag that people were posting over the Facebook pictures. I don't know how many people in the chat or how many people listening even use Facebook. But the fact of the matter is that all of these people were putting this rainbow flag, like a translucent, semi-transparent picture over their little, the flag over their little pictures, and now they're putting the French flag, doing the same thing they did with the rainbow, and everybody's whining and complaining, and we're with Paris, and you know. And we're with France. And our prayers go to France and to Paris. And I was explaining to them, well, that's not very smart because France and Paris are corporations. Why would you send your prayers and thoughts to a corporation? Makes no sense. And so I look at this as an opportunity really to try and open people's eyes because people are obviously using the language improperly. And so I punched this into quite a few Facebook pages last night, or commented on quite a few posts, and was waiting for the backlash. And amazingly, see, here's another one. It has a picture of a dog with a translucent French flag on it, and it says, change your profile picture to support France and the people of Paris. Well, I don't understand what they're saying here because I know what they think they're saying, but it's not what they're saying at all. Change your profile picture to support France and the people of Paris. Well, France is a corporation. Paris is a corporation. The people of Paris, the people of France, the people of America, the people of Canada, Australia, Britain, I don't give a damn where you live, are all citizens, which is subjects, which are subservient and held in servitude by the corporations that they call their countries. So why are you supporting France or Paris? Well, you should support the people, and you should inform the people that they live in servitude to the corporation, which they call their country. So why would you be putting the French flag over your picture? Makes no freaking sense at all. Either you're completely ignorant of the facts or you're a shill. And I can't, I'm not going to run around trying to figure out who's a shill and not who's not. I mean, some are obviously shills, but a lot of them are very good-meaning people. They just don't understand the reality of the situation. And to those people, we have a duty to inform them of where they're right and where they're wrong. And so I was really waiting for some flack last night. And surprisingly, I got very little of it. And that I take as a huge positive. In fact, I found a guy who I guess we're friends. I don't know exactly where he's from, but I'd posted this before about countries or member states of the UN and do the bidding of. World War II, created by globalists, spawned as planned the UN and Israel. World War III began the same day. World War III is a psychological, spiritual war designed to destroy nation states, in particular the West. Paris is just one more example of a plan designed by the sick minds of the globalists. So I'd posted something very similar to this, I don't know, last week or something. So when I saw this guy like this latest note I put in, and I went to check it out, I see that he had completely plagiarized the last thing I'd printed, which is very similar to what I wrote here. And the only thing he changed on it, as I said, all countries, and he changed it to almost all countries, but total plagiarization of what I'd written. And I just have to take that as a compliment. And I had some other people asked if this last thing that I'd written, if it would be okay for them to plaster it all over Facebook. Absolutely, I let it rip. So while I was waiting for some serious backlash, especially over Israel, surprisingly, I think I got one or maybe two negatives out of untold numbers of thumbs up and all that kind of stuff. So, it's a psychological war for sure. And the good people here at UCY and the listeners, we have a job, and that is to keep talking and keep teaching and keep shining the light. Because they can't stand the light, and they certainly can't stand the truth. So if we keep shining the light on them and keep putting the truth right in front of their freaking faces, they will not get what they want. And we can't give them what they want. Because if we give them what they want, in other words, if we consent to what they want, then it's our fault. We can't blame them. Okay? So it's showtime. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is definitely showtime. And we should encourage people to get involved, and we should not be fearful of these people. Fear is what pacifies people, and gives them the upper hand all the time. So we just don't want to go there. Anyways, that's just what I posted in there, and I'm still kind of surprised that I didn't get more flack over this Israel thing. You know, a lot of people are starting to think about this now, going, "Damn, what did come out of World War II?" Well, the UN and Israel, and the world's been going in the crap hole ever since. So all of the rest of it is noise, and it's all false flags, and it is designed to pacify you with fear. Once you have knowledge and once you understand what's going on, there's nothing to be fearful about. It's just what it is, and that's all what it is. So I see that Mr. Obama man there wants to bring in, what is it, 100,000 or better, 200,000, whatever the hell the number is, Syrian migrants. By the time everybody's done, we might as well pack up, move to Syria, because it's going to be completely empty. They're empty in all of these places. So most of these places are, and most of these migrants aren't coming from Syria. It's the Muslim groups, Islamic groups, the Sharia groups that are being brought in to destroy your nation state. And because you, being the West, is all basically built on the Christian doctrine, whereas Islam is the kill all the Christians. So you'd wonder why they're bringing them into your country. You'd wonder why the churches are being put on the back burner. You wonder why the very laws were supposed to come from our Creator, which are based on the Christian laws. And I'm not saying that Christianity. I mean, I believe in a Christian, in a Creator. I do not believe in religion. That's where we run into all these problems. That's where how we became subservient. That's how we become subjects. So they use that as a deceptive move to entrap the good people. But if you look at the way it's set up, is you have the separation of church and state in the West, okay? Because if you didn't, you wouldn't have a legal system. You would have a law system. Therefore, they needed to separate church and state. Therefore, they run by rule of law, which is an ambiguous term, which in fact is designed to cause harm and turn people into subjects of the state, which is completely different than law, which gave you dominion. So they took away your dominion through the law system and the banking system. But in the case of the Islamic groups, whereas you are not allowed to use the law that was the founding of our countries, supposedly, you can't go there in a court. They skip over the principles and supremacy of God and go to rule of law, which is an ambiguous term on purpose. But in the case of Islam, when they come to the countries in the West, they are given inclusion for the religion, not separation, but inclusion, so that they set up their Sharia courts, which are religious courts, of which you were never allowed to have. So you know that this is a setup. You know this is the destruction of your nation. And it's given the okay by your so-called elected officials. And that is at the very least treason. And so we have to pay attention to that as well. And that's just the way it goes, folks. Now, I'm always talking about not buying media. So, and I mean that. Don't give these clowns a nickel. Ever. So I was invited to join this. Oh Jesus! Oh, there's dickweed on there. Okay, I may have to. Let's see. Recent group photos. There's that little Jewish son of a so and so. What's his name? The hell is his name? Anyways, that little Jewish guy he had a show on Sun TV. Ezra, whatever his last name is, real dick. But anyways, I was invited to join this group called All the Liberal Party News Toronto Star. We hate the Toronto Star. So I was invited to join that, and which is this is obviously a conservative group, so they're still confused. They don't say hate all media; they hate the Toronto Star. So obviously they're a conservative group, and that's fine, I guess. But it gave me an opportunity to put a post in that I put up way back in 2008, and regarding the Toronto Star and conversation that I had with their editorial board back then, and this is a response, an updated response that I received from the Toronto Star editorial board way back in 2000. And I originally did this, it would have been at the end of 2008, and this is January of 2009. That I have another response from them. This is an update response received from the Toronto Star editorial board when I asked questions about one of their editorials. And I said way back then, if you live in rural Ontario, you may want to consider canceling the Toronto Star. They'll take your money, but they won't recognize you. And this is part of the response I got from the Toronto Star editorial board. Dear Mr. Stevens, okay? Now, my name ain't Mr. and it ain't Stevens, but they don't care. They're all brain dead. The community I'm referring to is the Star's community of readers, given that the Star is considered the voice of the Greater Toronto Region, or the GTA. This would be the community of readers in Toronto and the Greater Toronto Area. Certainly many people in many communities would disagree with the views put forward in this editorial opinion, as with any editorial. That is their prerogative, as it is yours. I will not be taking any further action on this editorial, nor will I be providing you with verification of the research done by the Star's editorial board, as that is certainly not our practice. I think the arguments put forward in the editorial speak for themselves, and it is beyond the scope of my role to question the conclusions drawn by the Star editorial people. As I told you, an editorial is an opinion based on the editorial board's interpretation of the facts in hand. While you may hold other opinion, I see no value in our debating these facts. I'm not going to change your mind about this issue, and the Star's editorial board is not likely to reverse its position on this issue at this point in time. Regards, Kathy English. And this is, there's an old story, and I can't remember the guy's name. It was way back when, and I think he worked for the New York Times, and he was being given some kind of an award or something. I know he's retired. I cannot remember the guy's name. But he spelled it out pretty good, is that, we are whores of the rich man, the newspaper people, the media people. We are whores, or prostitutes, he called it. We are prostitutes of the rich man. For if any of us really printed our real opinion, we would find ourselves on the street the next day looking for a job. And that is the truth about the media. So, I'm glad Toronto, they put up that, I hate the Toronto Star, or whatever it's called. But this is something when I was working my damnedest out, this fraud known as the wind energy. And that I went from the go-to guy, both for media, the wind industry, and wind fighters, to being ostracized because I dared bring up where this all came from, which was from the different organizations of the United Nations. And so they infiltrated the just like they always infiltrate everything, they infiltrated the wind fight with professors and doctors and people with paper. And unfortunately, that's the sad part of this place and everywhere else, is that people get so easily suckered by these so-called experts working for the other side, and it turns it into a very controlled opposition. And unfortunately, people are working their way through that now, finally, understanding that these people that jump in to help, and all you have to do is do a little bit of research, and you'll find out who these so-called heroes are attached to, and you'll find out they came from the very people, very groups that you're fighting against. So that's just a heads up on that stuff. Let's see now. I'm going to, like I said, one thing about, I saw in the paper when I went to get my coffee, and I've seen it several times since Friday, and what a great day for a false flag, Friday the 13th. Great day for something like that. But where was I going here? Yes. I've seen mentioned more than a few times that this is the worst attack in France since World War II. Well, yeah, because they're intricately related. Okay, same deal. World War II was World War II. This is World War III. So you got attacked. Okay. But this time, they're looking for your consent. Okay? Jack it all up. The world ain't safe. Any way you look at it, the world ain't safe, okay? We're having all these attacks. And we got this world globalist climate change thing coming up in Paris. So now we can lock it down, and we can show how safe we've made it for these dignitaries. And they're going to ramp up the fear-mongering on the climate change, that it is an act of terrorism, really, if you don't submit to agreeing to allow us to save the climate and the environment, then obviously you're a terrorist against the planet. Don't be surprised if that type of rhetoric shows up during the Paris climate change conference. Don't be surprised at all. They're piggyback stuff. And I'll guarantee you they're going to piggyback this one any way they can, because they plan it out. Our problem is we're reactionary. That's our biggest problem. We react to this nonsense. Okay, that's what we do. Now, here I am at the Toronto Star. It's the biggest paper in Ontario, and I just love this garbage. I mean, these people pump this crap out. They're just like the Ministry of Truth, Ministry of Untruth. Same garbage, man. You know, we need a story on this. Okay, we'll print it up this way. Well, no, we need it twisted. Oh, we can twist it. Not a problem. That's what we do. We're prostitutes of the rich men. You pay us, and we write whatever you want. And that that means that it's not just the media that's prostitutes. The teachers are prostitutes. Okay? They're pushing the agenda. They don't question it. They don't fight back against it. They're prostitutes of the rich men. Your politicians are definitely prostitutes of the rich men. Okay? You see, they got everybody dependent on the dollar. And people live in fear of not having the dollar. And therefore, they will do whatever is requested of them for the dollar. And that is the puppet strings of the useful idiots living in fear. Now, it's either they do it for money, they do it for recognition. The entertainment business does it constantly. Okay, I'm a star. Anything that's marketable, the rich men use, and then they use them as they use the politicians, teachers, entertainment people, sports figures, preachers, as mouthpieces to propagate their wishes. And that's just the way it is. So now I have a nice picture of, let's see, who it is here. We have our new Prime Minister, Trudeau, who is such a freaking dolt, it's ridiculous. Okay? I mean, we should be embarrassed. But then I have people say, well, I've always voted conservative, but this time I'm going to vote liberal. And why is that? Well, for hope. Hope? Like Obama's hope and change or whatever that thing he was spewing? Okay? I mean, people are so stupid now, they don't even get connections. Simple connections like that. Blows right over their heads. So here we have a picture, Prime Minister Trudeau, Justin Trudeau. He's the new guy. He's just in. U.S. President Barack Obama and United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, or Ben Ki-moon, walked together to participate in a family photo with fellow world leaders at the start of the G20 summit. Now, did you see what they said? To participate in a family photo. Now, wait a minute. Are you telling me that Trudeau and Obama and Moon are related? As they come together for a family photo? Is that what they're trying to tell you? Or are they just trying to tell you it's called the Global Family Compact? Okay? And that's what it is. I mean, how is it that you have all these bushes running around? How come these people never go away? They just never go away. How is that possible? Did anybody ever believe that any little boy or girl can become president? You know? So here they are, and it's a family photo. It's a beautiful photo. I don't see. Let's see. I look in this picture here. This looks. Well, anyways, I'm gonna put this in just for your viewing pleasure. Now the G20 is a wonderful group. Stephen Harper was a member of the G20 because he was the prime minister. And I don't know if he got to have a family photo. I'm sure he did. But this is the family photo, and it was Stephen Harper at the G20 who stated specifically that this meeting is a loss of national sovereignty. That's what he said. And none of the media reported on it. I had media call me about it, including the CBC. Well, they didn't call me. They called me about the G20, but they didn't want to hear about what Trudeau had to say. Or not Trudeau, but Harper. And when I phoned Harper's office and talked to some of his staff and asked for their take on this loss of national sovereignty statement, I was told that they weren't allowed to discuss that. So here we have Trudeau, who says that he's different than Harper, and vote for me and have some hope, and here's the new PM hooked up with the same group that Harper was hooked up to. That Trudeau had nothing to say good about Harper, and yet here we have Trudeau rubbing shoulders with the same guys Harper was rubbing shoulders for. So does it really matter how you vote? No. And I think people better wake up to that fact real quick. I was talking to some people last night, and they said they think the reason they really went after the youth, because the left always goes after the youth, okay? Always. And the kids are all excited. These people I was talking to last night uptown, that the students were all, the young people were all excited, those that were turning 18 because they're going to get to vote. And the only issue they were interested in was the fact that Trudeau promised to legalize weed. Now, I think there's other more important issues, but people are talking to saying, the kids don't get any of this stuff, okay? They legalize weed, and that's just so that the so-called government can profit off of it, which is exactly true. But the students don't understand the word legal or legalize. They don't get that at all, okay? So they prey on ignorance. And it's not just the left that does that. Every party does that. It's just standard practice because they're in the business of deception. How can we deceive these people to give us what we want? How do we get their consent? It's all about consent. And so I don't know what Trudeau has to say here. Says he's working to ensure the safety of Canadians in the wake of Paris attacks. And in order to make them safe, he's immediately going to start importing Islamic terrorists. Doesn't say that in this particular story, but there's another story here that will tell us that. This is what I love about the newspapers. Obviously, the safety and security of Canadians is a priority for me, of course, and my government. You see, his government, not your government, his government. It was the Harper government, and now it's the Trudeau government, because that, in fact, again, they're telling you the truth. It is his government. Okay, he is the CEO of the so-called government, which is a business. That's why they have domestic affairs, foreign affairs, and provincial and federal affairs. as domestic affairs, I guess I call that. And the word affairs means business. These are all businesses, okay? All of them. So when he says it's his government, my government, what a turd, eh? What a turd. Vote for me, Justin Trudeau. I want to be your new PM and represent the people. Thanks for voting, you bunch of bozos. Now, it's a priority for me and my government. He is the CEO of the board of directors of the company. It says so right there in his statement. But I don't know why people can't get that stuff. Guess we weren't taught comprehension in school, huh? I've been speaking with our ministers of public safety, been speaking with the various police and security agencies to ensure that Canadians are kept safe, Trudeau said Sunday. I guess they're going to have to phone the Prime Minister's office this week sometime, huh? He's been speaking with public safety, Minister of Public Safety. Well, the Minister of Public Safety is the ministry of which the police are under, okay? But the Minister of Safety can't tell the police what to do. They are an arm's length agency from the government and the minister and the police to police. So he's going to be speaking. He's been already speaking with the Minister of Public Safety, who has nothing to do with the police, or has no power over the police, at least. Been speaking with the various police and security agencies, which is a very important word, because agencies are theoretically and legally not part of the government. They're contractors. To ensure that Canadians are kept safe. From what? From what? Kept safe. Kept safe. Kept safe. Obviously, it's a topic we are engaging with here, with the other leaders as well, to ensure continued safety of our citizens. Citizens being subjects. Okay, and you are you live in a little land called servitude to Mr. Trudeau's government. Okay, so the continued safety of our citizens. And to be in servitude is to be enslaved. So what the statement should say is the continued safety of our slaves. Okay? Those we stole from their parents upon them being born, and place them into a lifetime of servitude. But he's concerned about your safety. The issue of security, terrorism, and the plight of refugees fleeing violence all promise to dominate discussions as the leaders of the world's largest 20 economies gather in seaside Turkish resort city of Antalya for a 2-day summit. Trudeau, who is attending his first international summit as Prime Minister, spoke on the topic only when prompted by a reporter during a meeting with Mexican President Enrique, I can't say it, Pena Nieto, Sunday morning. His reserved comments were in sharp contrast to the hardened tone many world leaders have brought to this summit in confronting the threat of Islamic State extremists blamed for Friday's deadly assaults in Paris. Isn't that brilliant? The hardened tone many world leaders have brought to this summit in confronting the threat of Islamic State extremists blamed for Friday's deadly assaults in Paris. And who are these migrants that are flooding into these Western countries? The same guys that this hardened tone many world leaders have taken. What a freaking load of bunk. During a meeting with the Turkish president, Erdogan, ahead of the summit's start here, U.S. President Barack Obama branded the terrorist incident as an attack on the civilized world. Well, civilized is subject. Subject is registered to the state, and they're subjected to the state. So what is, again, this guy talking about? The enslaved world. Is an attack on the enslaved world, of who we, the corporate governments, have enslaved. And he's concerned about this? As we, I'm sure each said to French President Francois Hollandaise and the French people, we stand in solidarity with them in hunting down the perpetrators of this crime and bringing them to justice, Obama said. Well, Christ, Obama, why don't you take yourself and your family, apparently, your G20 family, and get a photo in front of the freaking mirror, pick up the photo and look at the damn thing, and you will see who the perpetrators are. You. The family. Sounds a little mafioso, doesn't it? Huh? Erdogan had previously come out strongly in favor of battling terrorists, warning that we are at a point where words are not enough to fight terrorism. So I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they'll go out in the battlefield, wherever that is. And, the only way that you're going to stop the Islamic terrorists is to, I guess, get slingshots and fire little pork balls at them, man. Yell, incoming! You don't need machine guns. All you need is some pork balls, bacon strips. That ought to scare them off. But I mean, Obama he's talking about fighting these Islamic terrorists, but then he's, I believe, designated the month of December, which is basically the hoodwink Christian month, as declared December Muslim month. But this is a guy that's fighting Islamic jihadists. Give that a little bit of thought. I mean, this is like a really bad movie script. Foreign Affairs is advising Canadians who are traveling to France to exercise a high degree of caution due to an elevated threat of terrorism. Trudeau made his diplomatic debut Sunday morning with a bilateral meeting with Indonesian President Joko Widodo. In that meeting, the Prime Minister pledged $14 million for infrastructure spending in Indonesia. That's $14 million coming out of your pocket to go to Indonesia to build infrastructure. While the poverty rate here in these lands, I don't want to say in Canada because it's very difficult to be in a piece of paper, but the ever-increasing poverty on these lands that they refer to as Canada. But we're going to send $14 million more over to some country that has been entrusted with an awful lot of our industry that was pulled out of the West and sent to the East. That's not enough. Now we want to finance their infrastructure. Well, Mr. Trudeau, that's a good thought. Later in the morning, he met Nito of Mexico. He also spoke to a G20 business forum where he highlighted the themes of his election campaign, including big investments in infrastructure and boosting the middle class. Boosting, and I'm not sure. If I look up boosting, I should look up that word because something tells me that I may not get it right this second. Anyways, the prime minister was mobbed. Mobbed. Is that terrorism? I don't know. The prime minister, according to this story, was mobbed for selfies at the event, according to, of course, a Canadian press report. Just makes you kind of wanna puke. But hey, this is a newspaper, right? It's a newspaper. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I can come up with something there on that. But anyways, yeah, if somebody wants to jump in on this today, it wouldn't hurt my feelings at all. A lot of people don't like calls. Sometimes it gets a little long, yammering on for a couple hours here. I always like to know what other people are thinking or what they have on their minds or a particular subject that maybe I haven't paid enough attention to that's kind of got them going. It's all about sharing information and getting people to understand what's going on. I think the most important thing is to get people not to be feared by all of this propaganda that we get every day. So if someone wants to talk about something, you can call the phone-in number, which is 1-718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'd really like to get your take. I mean, I'm giving you my take on this Paris thing and this G20 thing and a bunch of other stuff that's going on, and I wouldn't mind hearing your take. Maybe we can strike up a conversation and either continue on this line or move it to somewhere else. It's your show, not mine. I'm just the host of it. And, get involved. Now, let me just see here if I can find it's so incredibly ridiculous now. And I think that's why I'm not getting the kind of flack that I used to get. I mean, I used to get an awful pile of flack when I would post things years ago. I would get jumped on by every shill on the planet. And it's not so much anymore, which is good. That means to me that people are either getting it or we're running the shows off, one of the two. I don't know which. It's working out in our favor right now, except the fact that we have this problem with them. I mean, you got to think about it, okay? We here in and I'm sure it's placed most places. The first thing we got really invaded by that was outside the West was East Indians. Got just flooded with East Indians back in the 70s. and into the early 80s and that. And then came the wave of Chinese, especially on the West Coast. And now we have the Muslim wave. I think there's 120 or 40 different languages spoken in the city of Toronto now, or the Greater Toronto Region, which is only about 5 million people or so. So you take a little country like Denmark, which is like around 5 million people. So the country of Denmark has about the same population as the Greater Toronto Region. And can you imagine going to Denmark with 5 million people in the whole country, and every time you turned around, you got a different language coming at you? It's not multiculturalism. It's called genocide. So we have to understand what that's all about. Okay, let's see here. Obama vows to step up ISIS fight as Paris attacks overshadow the G20. Let's see. Let me see. Where I saw wait, that weird. That story has already disappeared. That's the other thing I like about. Let me see. Let me try this. I don't know. You got to excuse me. I don't know how many people are in the chat or listen to this show from Canada. But this is a picture that this blows me away. I didn't know it was still up here, but it is. And I'm going to put it in the chat. This is our diverse cabinet in a, I'm sure a lot of people have seen this, but this is like, when I see these people walking up the road here, I don't know why, but when I look at this, I kind of envision them, as the Wizard of Oz going up the brick road, or a bunch of retards about to jump into a rendition of M-I-C-K-Y-M-O-U-S-E. These seemingly nice people are actually your real terrorists. And they are terrorists. Now, we had Trudeau. I've never read this story, and I'm going to just see what these clowns have to say about it. Ottawa firm on decision to admit 25,000 Syrian refugees. Security will not be compromised during the resettlement process, spokesman for Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Minister says, who I think is, I think, also a foreigner. I think it's, I can't be certain on that, but I think that the Minister of Immigration is a foreigner. So regardless of the terrorist attacks that happened on Friday and everything Trudeau said about the terrorist attacks and protecting his little slaves on his plantation, because it is his government, and he's going to have the police protect us, who the government can't tell the police what to do. It's freaking ludicrous. It's so sad, that all of these people, me including, spent those years in the public school system. we should sue Mr. Trudeau and his little bunch of little puppets there because, they talk about the abuse that the indigenous population put up with, and it was abuse. But when you look at it from this side, the abuse we experienced is not unlike the abuse that the indigenous people suffered through. The lands here were flooded with migrants, and their society, their way of life was genocided. I mean, their society, their beliefs, their customs, their children were stolen by the state and indoctrinated and put on reserve. And so what we experienced is not that much different. We were stolen, turned into subjects, and live in servitude. And we were served up in the public school system, a bunch of bunk, just like the native children were fed in the church schools. Totally evil. So our plight isn't much different. In fact, if you look at it closely, it's basically a template of what happened to the indigenous people. Only people don't see that. They seem to think that we're special here in the West and that our government cares about us. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, but you got deceived. So, as far as I'm concerned, I spent whatever number of years I spent in school being mentally abused. I was given no useful information whatsoever. I didn't know that this so-called country was a corporation. I didn't realize, and nobody told me, that even when we got our new flag and we dumped the British flag and supposedly got a new charter, that the Queen remained head of state, and that the Prime Minister and the cabinet of the company known as Canada are subservient to the Queen Crown / corporation. Nobody told me any of this stuff. They withheld information. So if you look at it as a contract with your so-called government, they never disclosed to you the importance of these contracts that they entered us into without disclosure. And besides the mental abuse that we suffered in the schools, by not giving us disclosure, they've done the same thing throughout our lives. No disclosure, never taught to us. And we're given these rags to read or talking heads on the TV to listen to who never disclose any truth. So we should all be really ticked off. Maybe we should have a 35 million people sign a class action. Because we got to reclaim the land. Make no mistake about it. I don't care how it goes about. I'm not big on violence. But if you threaten my family, well, you're not going to be welcomed in for a cup of coffee or some tea. But the fact is that we, the slaves, have built everything on these lands, and we've been robbed of our freedoms, our labor, and they say that they own all the land, when in fact they just put an empty claim on it and got people to migrate here so that they could justify their claim, because possession is 90% of the law. And obviously there ain't enough of this royalty and bankers and lawyers to populate these lands, so they suckered us and our forefathers into coming over and laying claim to it on behalf of a company and a bunch of investors. Well, that's deception and that's fraud. Fact of the matter is that everything that is here we built. And we need to claim it because we are the rightful owners of it. Or we can put up with this lunacy until it just gets to the point where you ain't got no way out here. So anyways, just really quickly here, what's he got to say? Let's see. The terrorist attacks that rocked Paris on Friday night shouldn't shake the Canadian government's resolve to take in thousands of refugees from Syria, experts say. Again, who are these experts? Well, they're hordes of rich men. They are involved in destroying nation states. Even though one of the attackers may have entered Europe using a Syrian passport. Well, that's just one, isn't it? We don't have to worry about that. According to Reuters, and you can trust Reuters, because if you listen to Alex Jones, he'll bring up, see, it says right here in Reuters or AP, see that? Right. But anyways, according to Reuters, a Syrian travel document was found near a gunman outside the Stade de France after a coordinated assault that left at least 129 people dead, 352 wounded. The agency reported that someone used the passport to enter Greece on October 3rd with a group of refugees, but it's not clear, if it legitimately belonged to the gunman. It was probably planted there, right? Maybe. The Islamic State militant group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Despite those reports and all the other hell that's going on in Europe with this flood, and these are not migrants, okay? These are warriors. Okay? It is a war. And it's pretty bad when your so-called government is funding the arrival of those who are vested to destroy your nation states. It's pretty freaking bad when you, the slave taxpayer, are paying out of your labor and out of your pocket to pay for this influx of people who come here bound to destroy your nation and your way of life. That's pretty sad. Okay? So instead of we're being invaded by the British in the old days and that, we're helping those displaced. Now, if you go through the UN documents and you go through some of the writing, it's all laid out there for you. Okay? Create the crisis to get to the solution. And use the media, i.e. this paper I'm reading from, to stir up the reaction. Now, all over the place, here in Ontario at least, and I'm sure it's across the country, and I'm sure it's through the States as well, there's all these goody groups, right, who want to, because they're so heartbroken with what happened to these poor souls, not understanding it was all set up, it was all orchestrated, so they tug at the heartstrings of the people. And so now all of these little towns are begging, they're putting together groups to bring these refugees into their small communities. Well, if I don't have the document here right now, but I did have a white paper document. Repopulation of rural Ontario, and this document's all over the place because it's a UN, Rockefeller, Soros, World Bank, International Bank document. Because the population is aging, because everyone was encouraged not to have children. And the only way that we can, bring up the economies in the rural areas is through immigration. So that's all being fed to the people, and then this looks like a great opportunity to start that part of the program, bringing in immigrants to take over the businesses and whatnot in the rural areas. And I got a call from, I forget what country it was now. It was Indonesia, one of these countries over there. I actually got a call asking, I guess they found a business listing or somewhere on Google, and asking me, they already knew how old I was, was I considering retiring in the not too distant future, because it would be terrible for such a wonderful business like mine to just disappear, and that's what happens. Because it's all documented. I actually got the call, and that Canada is a very wonderful country, and there's this program, and it exists, that the government, in this case Trudeau's government, will fund, and it's always about the damn money, and it's always about flattery, right? And it's about working your ego. So they phone you up and they say, well, it says here that you're probably going to be retiring soon, and your business has been in business for 30 years, 40 years, whatever, and it would be such a shame to have it just disappear after all the hard work to build up such a great reputation. Ego stroke, flattery. And we have a program that the government will see if you shut your business down, that you didn't sell it, therefore you didn't get the value out of it. And a lot of these single small businesses do just that. They just work till they get to whatever age, and then they just pack it up. And so now they start offering, they will do a market value evaluation of it, and that way you can pocket what you deserve. And then we will have an immigrant come over and take over your business, and then you will get paid for it. So now we have ego stroking, flattery, and cash, as they like to say in the media, a perfect storm. And you, the taxpayer, are paying for this. But the problem is that it doesn't work. This government program doesn't work if you are a white male or female person. I can't. It's hard to even talk anymore. If you are a white male or female living on these lands, let me put it that way, you don't qualify. Even if you were, say, I was a plumber, and worked at my business for 40 years, and I'm getting ready to retire, and have sacked away what I think is enough to retire on, and I'm just going to shut the business down quietly, sell my equipment, call it a day, and then you get that call. And they always use the same template. But even if I was working for this plumber, and say I'm a young guy, and I want to continue in the plumbing business, and this guy offers me the business, but I can't afford it, and we can't work out terms that I can afford it, so therefore he's going to shut down the business, I'm going to lose my job. And now there's this program out there which wants to keep these businesses going, apparently, but unless I'm an immigrant from another country, specifically the West, or the East, I don't qualify. So I, the young apprentice who really, really, really wants to be in this business, do not have the opportunity, and the funding will not go to that young man or woman. It is only earmarked for immigrants. See how that works? And it's no different than when they brought the wind turbines in here. Same thing. The stroke the ego, flattery, and cash. And that's how that was sold. It's how they always sell this stuff to people. It's important that we get these up, and you have this land, and we're not going to use much of it, and I can see by this you're a great steward of the land by the way you keep your farm. Flattery, flattery, flattery. Your forefathers probably started that, and they will be very proud the way you've continued on this. But we understand that it's become more financially difficult to run a family farm, and stroke, stroke, stroke. And we can tell that you are a good man, and you understand the importance of fighting climate change and all that. A little ego stroke in there. And we're prepared to offer you a sizable amount of money, really just chicken feed in the big scheme of things. But we think that's all we're going to have to offer you, you stupid ass, in order to get your name on this, get your signature on this piece of paper. So they do like to use templates, and they use lots of them, and they have templates that you just make some minor changes to the template, and it fits what you're doing that particular day. And so it's all about taking it down, folks, and using your money, which is just a reflection of your labor, because you're the one backing the money, not the gold. They signed you on, or your mother signed you on to this slavery game, and you're the surety for the loans. So, any so-called prime minister's got the government's got an open credit card because you're backing it. So, what thought process has to go into, well, we're going to give the Indonesians $14 million for infrastructure. Wait a minute. You're taking our labor out of our lands, and you're handing it to these people, and we're on the hook for it. And the government that was given to us here in Canada was referred to as responsible government. Now you got these so-called elected officials running all over Hal's Half Acre. I mentioned last night on the show that the mayor from this little two-bit township is heading to Paris. And that's totally outside the scope of their duties. In fact, when the mayor went to China, I mentioned a little bit last night, the deal was that the county will fund the travel expenses, I believe it is, for a mayor, and the county is the county council or the mayors of the different municipalities that are attached to the county. So they're not elected by the people to the county council. They're in-house selected by themselves, or they're automatically on council, and then they elect amongst themselves who the warden is. So that's completely outside the scope of the public, so-called public. But when I raised some crap about this mayor going to China, and when I looked through their documentation, it says that the county will fund 3 conferences per year for these mayors to attend, but they have to be inside the boundaries of Ontario because these municipalities are in Ontario. And these municipalities were created by Ontario. And therefore their jurisdiction, first of all, doesn't go outside of their municipalities, but any conference they attend has to be within the boundaries of the so-called province. Yet this mayor is being funded to go to China. And when I brought that up with the county, they said, well, I said, well, that's your policy. That's your policy. Well, we just changed it, you see, because not a government, it's a company. So now we have you paying for your county councilors and your local councilors and your mayors and stuff like that. You're paying for them to run all over hell's half acre, to be further indoctrinated, stroked, egos puffed up, and in order that these useful idiots do the bidding of the rich man. And we have to shine as much light on that as possible. We're just letting these guys get away with bloody murder, man. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyways, let's get back to this for a minute. Despite these reports of it being Islamic State militant groups that messed up France, despite those reports, the new liberal government said Saturday it stands firm in its re-election pledge to resettle 25,000 Syrian refugees. Asked whether the government still intends to meet that target by the end of the year as promised during the campaign, Jean-Bruno Villeneuve, a spokesman for immigration, refugee, and citizenship, told the Star in an email the government has reiterated and its commitment to resettling 25,000 refugees, and more details will be released in the coming days. Now, they want to do this by the end of the year. It's almost December. Okay? We got a month and 2 weeks prior to the end of the year. Now, how do you screen 25,000 people in a month and a half? Or you just open up the border and let them come on in. And then once they're in, then of course, like we did with the other influx of people from the east, that pretty much gives the rest of their family an open door to come in. So the 25,000 could swell to 100,000, lickety-frickin' split. Villeneuve stressed that security would not be compromised during the resettlement process. Effective security and health screening has always been central to our planning around Syrian refugees, he wrote. In a news conference at the White House Saturday afternoon, opposition leader Rona Ambrose, who's up to her ass in the globalist movement to destroy the nation, said Canadians were right to be concerned about taking in thousands of people from a hotbed of extremist activity over a short time frame. Ambrose didn't go so far as to call Prime Minister Trudeau a puppet. No, oops, I must have put that in. Ambrose didn't go as far as to call on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to abandon the plan. However, well, of course not. They're globalist horrors. The whole damn works of them. And they all work for the same side. Your destruction. The goal of supporting refugees from the region of Iraq and Syria is a very important goal for all Canadians. Well, hey, wait a minute here. I'm classed as a Canadian citizen subject living in servitude. And that would make me one of all Canadians. And it's a very important goal. Well, it's no goal of mine. It's no goal of mine. So how is you lump me in here? I think I'll have to sue the Toronto Star. Or sue, let's see, who am I suing here? We'll have to find out. We are very compassionate people, said Ambrose. Okay, so now this is this is the opposition leader speaking on behalf of all Canadians. I thought maybe this was Trudeau or one of his spokespeople. But this is actually the one that just got chucked out of government. The Conservative got chucked out, and she became the interim party leader. So she, who has nothing to say about anything, is saying that the goal of supporting refugees from the region of Iraq and Syria is very important to all Canadian, goal for all Canadians. We are very compassionate people, said Ambrose. the interim conservative leader. So how she's not even in government saying that it's a very important goal for all Canadians. And they print this crap. This is the largest newspaper in this province by a long shot. And this paper goes basically across the country. And they print this garbage. But, it goes on, Canadians are asking the question, can we do it this quickly in a secure way? And I think that's an appropriate question, says Ambrose. According to Peter Scholer, who chaired the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. Now, if it's a Board of Canada, it means that it's outside the reach of the corporation that created it, so we'll see what this clown's got to say. It would be a mistake to see the Paris attacks as evidence that refugees pose a security threat to Canadians, those living in servitude to the corporation. He thinks it would be a mistake to see the Paris attacks as evidence that refugees pose a security threat to Canadians. Based on what? But again, the paper never qualifies anything. He said the situation in Europe is drastically different from the process by which refugees are brought to Canada. No. Same process, same template. The situation in Europe just happens to be well underway, where in this part of the world it's just beginning. Okay, so yes, it is drastically different because that we haven't flung our doors totally wide open yet, but we're in the process of doing it. More than 814,000 migrants from Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and other war-torn countries have reached Europe by sea this year, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Thousands of them have crossed multiple borders as they head north to countries like Germany, in what Scholer described as a massive, disorganized rush of people. Well, you may describe it as that, but that's not what it is. Okay? The bankers, the lawyers, the politicians, all who have become subservient to the United Nations are well aware of how this works. Problem, reaction, solution. They're very aware of how this operates. There's nothing mystical about what went on in Iraq or Iran, or not Iran yet, but Syria, Afghanistan. There's nothing mystical about this. It's all templated, and it is for a purpose. To create this mass wave of humanity, they call it, animals, to flow in to other nations under the guise that they have nowhere to go. Well, they had somewhere to go. They had countries that they lived in, but you destroyed those countries in order to move these people out to use the good heartstrings and tug at those of the people to allow the opening of the doors. And you can look this as a Trojan horse, if you wish. There are virtually no security reviews on them as they're moving through Europe, he said. But under Canada's overseas resettlement program, Scholer said. Now, he's not even, this guy that's talking, apparently here, where'd it go? Where's that number I'm looking for? Now, this Peter Scholer, who chaired the Immigration and Refugee Board from 99 to 2002, he apparently he doesn't have nothing to do with immigration anymore, but he's the one that's spewing this nonsense. But under Canada's Overseas Resettlement Program, Schouler said, refugee claimants first undergo a thorough risk assessment by the UNHCR, whatever the hell that is. It's obviously got UN in front of it, before the agency refers them to the Canadian government. Okay, so we have a screening group from the UN who caused the organizations of the United Nations, which were created by the psychopaths of the world, are actually going to screen these people before they send them to Canada. I mean, how pathetic is that? Canadian officials then administer a visa interview and run the claimant through a security check before they're allowed to settle here. Although the Liberal government has announced whether it would follow this process to meet its target, Schouler said it would certainly be possible to screen 25,000 people before the end of the year. Now, let me get this straight. The UN, some UN body, is going to, first of all, put them through a thorough risk assessment before the agency then refers them to the Canadian government. Then the Canadian officials administer a visa interview and run the claimants through a security check before they're allowed to settle here. And Schouler said that it would be certainly possible to screen 25,000 refugees before the end of the year. So in the next month and a half, they're going to pick out of all of these migrants. The UN has to screen out 25,000 of them that they're sure would be acceptable by Canada, and then Canada's going to screen them and do security checks on them, and they're going to do 25,000 of these in a month and a half. Well, it'll be less than a month and a half because apparently they haven't even started yet. But this clown, Schouler, says it would certainly be possible to screen 25,000 people before the end of the year. Good luck with that, people. The process could be done safely, he said, by selecting only those claimants who are obviously low risk, like women and children, relatives of Syrians already in Canada, and people who fled the country during the early period of the war, when Assad's government was cracking down on democratic activists. So apparently we're going to use a different program here where we're supposedly going to allow the women and children in, and then the men will come in afterwards. Mm-hmm. These are people that are completely, let's see, they're not Sunni extremists who's been involved with violence. Schouler said he noted, however, that security checks are now only one element of the resettlement process, and it might be a bigger challenge to find housing and other supports for 25,000 refugees in fewer than 7 weeks. Really? How many people in Canada, and I hate saying that, in Canada, how in the hell can you be in a piece of paper? You can't. So we'll just try to keep working this so that I don't trip over this nonsense all the time. Find a challenge. Housing is the big challenge. No kidding. How many people on these lands are living on the street, and more every day? How many people are waiting on waiting lists with their children, trying to find a reasonable, decent place to live? And how long has this been going on here? For a very, 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 very freaking long time. But yet, we can just magically drop 25,000 refugees in here, and they're not refugees. I guess they're refugees in a sense because it was the very agencies that want to bring them here that destroyed their lives. But regardless, they can somehow, in less than 7 weeks, screen 25,000 people twice, once through the UN and once through the government immigration system. and dumped them in here and housed them someplace. Where are they going to house them? Well, and how are you going to pay for it? Now, the Premier of Ontario said that she wants to spend $10 million to bring in 10,000 refugees. Well, if you're, I don't know what math, the new math, maybe the number will come up different. But in the old math, the $10 million for 10,000 refugees is $1,000 a refugee. Now, how in the hell do you plan on facilitating 10,000 refugees with $10 million? And people think the 10 million is a big number. It ain't going to get first and last month's rent, let alone get you any food or a job. Where are these people going to work? I mean, this is the takedown time. And I was really hoping that we here in the West would wake up quicker than we apparently have been able to do it. But we better get on it pretty damn fast, or we're gonna eat it. And we better get our act together somehow here. None of these people represent you. None of these people are concerned about his your safety. We signed on, we didn't. And this is the other thing that makes me nuts. Canada, the corporation, signed on as a member state of a corporation called the United Nations. Actually, the United Nations is a tax-exempt foundation. Actually, the United Nations doesn't pay any taxes. Okay, so it's like a government, and it's a sovereign. Okay, like the Queen or the Pope. None of these people pay any taxes. Okay, they're absolute owners, and absolute owners don't pay tax. You don't own the land your house is sitting on, that's why you pay tax. The Queen Crown Corporation here that owns the land doesn't pay any tax because of they're playing God. Simple as that. So the United Nations wants to play God now, and that's why it's a tax-exempt foundation. So this is the kind of nonsense that we're dealing with. And now here's another story that just went by me that I better look at here in the last few minutes. I know I've been trying to explain to the Native people for a long time to stay the hell away from the United Nations. Okay, and this idle no more stuff. Okay, the rapporteur comes straight out of the United Nations. They set all this garbage up, just like Occupy and all the rest of it. Don't get suckered. Problem, reaction, solution. Cause big problems for people, get the reaction, and then offer the solution. Okay, what's this? Canada will implement UN Declaration on Rights of the Indigenous People. One guy wrote a pretty good article I read some time ago. It was a paper, not a newspaper. And it says, is there two kinds of humans? Right? Is there two kinds of people? If the United Nations has a Declaration of Human Rights, are Indigenous people not considered humans? Or are they something else? Because it says here Canada will implement the UN Declaration on Indigenous rights. Well, those rights, are they different than the UN human rights? See, it's all about the separating of people, the the constant conflict between people, and so they don't want to lump the indigenous people in with the rest of the people, so they come up with a indigenous human right, or indigenous rights, and then universal human rights. Well, what the hell's going on here? Divide and conquer is what it is. Anyways, let me run through this. How much time I got? I got a couple minutes. I'm going to do this how long is this story? Let's see if we can't buzz it. Anyways, Indigenous and Northern Affairs Minister Carolyn Bennett said the new Liberal government will rebuild the relationship with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples by including them in every decision that affects them and their land. That means starting out right, such that everything has been considered before a decision is taken so that you can find that win-win. Now, my wife just puked when I said win-win. Both her and I understand that statement, and we very much dislike it. A view can develop, but not, what's this, the win-win of you can develop there, but not there. Bennett said in an interview this week when asked how the Liberals plan to make good on their promise to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And that's a sad acronym because the acronym is UNDRIP. I mean, UNDRIP? Anyways, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gave that sentiment a boost. Oh, there's that boost word again, when he told his new cabinet ministers in their no relationship is more important to me and to Canada than the one with the Indigenous people. Okay. So your relationship is more important to you and to Canada than no relationship is more important to me and to Canada than the one with Indigenous people. What about the rest of us? What about the rest of us, Mr. Trudeau? Because this is the most important relationship to you. So the Indigenous people, I don't know what percentage of the people that make up in Canada, probably 2%, maybe? I don't know what the number is, but it sure can't be much over that. And this is the most important relationship you got. And I tell you why, because they're trying to wrestle the treaty lands away from the native people. Okay? Because they're not inside the corporation to speak so far. Okay? The reason that the Indigenous people don't really have any say on their lands is because they're not exactly understood to be citizens. Okay, so the Indigenous people, their reservations, their treaty lands, and that cannot be bought and sold. Okay, because only a citizen has the right to buy and sell. So the Indigenous people are outside of that on the reserves, at least the reserve lands, and the internationals want those reserve lands. That's why the Indigenous people are the most important on these lands. It's the only ones that they don't own the land to yet. And there's a lot of resources under those Indigenous lands. There's a lot of resources in the timber and that, and they want it. And they want to set it up so the Indigenous people, Paul Martin was involved in this, it wants to, this is again, ego and ego-stroking, flattery, and money. It's the tool they use constantly to entice the Indigenous people to become like the rest of us, that they can buy and sell those lands. And that's what that's about. The Crown has already constitutionally protected duty to consult with Aboriginal peoples on issues that might affect their interests, but the UN Declaration goes much further and calls on governments to obtain free, prior, and informed consent, including when it comes to natural resources development. The idea that this could turn into a veto was one of the concerns that Canada, under the previous government of Conservative Minister Stephen Harper, cited as a reason for its opposition to signing UNDRIP in 2007, and then its refusal to adopt an outcome document last year. How does the federal government implement those practices, or principles, without risking a loss of control over its agenda? Bennett said achieving mutually beneficial results begins by having a conversation and having it the right way. Well, this word conversation is a UN, what is it? It's a UN word or a globalist word used to really mean sucker into. Now, when I was in the elections back some time ago, on the local level here, we had the deputy mayor always using that. We need to start a conversation, okay? And that was to open your mind to the propaganda and allow some stroking and some flattery and possibly some money in order that you be sucked into this shit. So be careful when you see anything written down about having a conversation or starting a conversation, and of course having it right away. There are many ways of achieving mutual relations or results, but it begins with the conversation, and it isn't writing legislation and then saying you love it, don't you? Okay, so this is a sucker move. We are committed to sitting down early, at the earliest possible moment, on every single thing that will affect Indigenous people in Canada, said Bennett, who believes it is hugely important. All parliamentarians, government departments, provinces, territories, mayors, and municipalities understand this too. Okay, Bennett, who said she was advised by First Nation friend to consider herself the Minister of Reconciliation, is aware that she has set the bar high for herself, but she also has high expectations for her newly renamed Department of Indigenous and Northern Affairs. Indigenous and Northern Affairs. There's that word again, affairs. It is called business. Look it up. The meaning of affairs is business. I'm a bit of a hard marker when it comes to what a strategy that is going to do something looks like, Bennett said in a speech to department staff Tuesday, according to a video provided to the Star communication staff upon request. Bennett said, or did her best to rally bureaucrats on side by promising a different way of doing things. Now, Bennett is a puppet. Okay, you know damn well that Paul Martin, who came out of Power Corp, is basically pulling the strings on the Indigenous part of this thing for the UN because that's his job. We want to be empowered to bring forward good ideas, to understand the kinds of solutions that you know exist on the ground and that we can just harvest from the people who have been doing the thinking about these things for a very long time. Yeah, scheming in the background. How the hell are we going to get a hold of these treaty lands, say the corporate overlords? Is the game. Bennett told the Star the new government will have to have some wins that will demonstrate reconciliation in order to keep the goodwill flowing. There is a lot of understanding that some things are going to take more time than others, but the indicators of goodwill and steps in the right direction are going to be very important, said Bennett. One of these indicators will be the national inquiry into the more than 1,200 missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls in Canada. Really? So you're going to use a national inquiry into the 1,200 missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada in order to coerce the Native people to sign on to this stupid UN Indigenous rights, while the whole scheme is based on stealing the Indigenous lands from the people. How freaking low can you go? Absolutely pathetic. And the pathetic part is that the Indigenous leaders, just like every other leader is part and parcel of the problem, selling out their own people. Now, a lot of the indigenous people I talk to are really starting to get onto that their leaders are absolutely corrupt, because the leaders like flattery, like their ego stroked, and like cash more than they care about their people. And we got to drive anybody with that attitude out ASAP. I don't think I'm going to get to the end of this article, but you get the drift of it, anyways. Here, okay? It's all about coercion. It's all about deception. It's all about lie to get what you want. It's about having the bankers there with the money held out. It's about having the lawyers there writing the necessary legalese into these agreements that most people cannot understand. No different than the treaties that were written with the natives long time ago. Okay, bait and switch, smoke and mirrors, out and out lies, deceptions, total lack of good faith and disclosure. Oh, Jesus. Okay, just a minute. I got to run down here a little bit more because I see Elizabeth May's name in here. Bennett said she was pleased to see Conservative interim leader Rona Ambrose lend her support to the inquiry, and noted that NDP MPs Nikki Ashton and Romeo Sagnash and Green Party leader Elizabeth May have always been on board. Well, of course they have, because they're all players. You know, if there's one book you're going to read to help you understand the environmental movement and who these players are, and it is all about business, please, you can read it on my blog, canadiantruths.wordpress.com, or at least you can get to it from there, an online edition of a book written in 1992, I think, or published 92, 94, by Elaine Dewar, called Cloak of Green. And everybody needs to go through that book. I don't care what country you live in, read the damn book. And then you'll understand much better what's going on. And it was brought in, let's see, but the last sentence I guess I'm going to get out here is to say it was brought in by former Liberal Finance Minister Paul Martin in 1996. But Bennett disputes that it was intended as an austerity measure. Paul Martin, through More Strong United Nations, and More Strong was Paul Martin's boss at Power Corp. That's the family compact. Is up to his ass in this Idle No More stuff. He's up to his ass in deceiving the indigenous people here of these lands. And my attitude is we better gather together, pure people, because we are not separate. The indigenous people got totally screwed over. We got totally screwed over. But we are not separate entities. We are the same. We are the people of these lands. And we need to stop this continual screwing over we're getting by the lawyers, bankers, and their front men called the puppets, politicians. That has to come to a conclusion somehow. So I can see by the clock on the wall, it says it's 1:58, and I think we're ending near the show here. So I just want to thank anybody who tuned in, especially those in the chat. And if anything I'm telling you, people, is making any sense to you whatsoever, I would request that you go out there and promote UCY TV, because it's still a small network. I believe in it, and we need to build this network as best we can, as fast as we can, keep this going. So, hopefully something I said today resonates with people. Hopefully somebody learns something. I know I do. And so, just make this all time. 7 o'clock. Hey, everybody, time's up. Good.